And so what that looks like for me is people-based. It's how many millionaires can I create? How many people can I set up to accomplish big things? Because I know what I can do by myself, but what can I do with everyone that I'm investing in on my team, in my company? How do I build this massive empire?
Welcome to your podcast, Successful Quitters by Sara Núñez B.
So, would you rather have an internship with Jeff Bezos or with Elon Musk?
That's a good question. Between those two, I would probably choose Jeff Bezos. And the reason would be because the skill set that he has aligns, I think, more closely to my skill set. So there's more I could learn from him. Elon is a very, very tactical, hands-on type of founder. And so a lot of the things that he does, I just don't think that I have the same overlapping talents and skills. So I would just get less out of it. But they're both obviously, incredible, and I could learn a ton from either of them. But I think those two, Jeff really, from an organizational standpoint, did some things that I would love to learn from.
Nice. Sweet or salty?
Sweet. My wife is salty.
Sweet.
She loves all the salty stuff, but I end up with the sweet treats.
Nice. Same here, definitely. So would you rather go to a theme park or the beach for the day?
Well, I don't know. It's a tricky question. So probably a theme park, because I've never been a big fan of the beach. But when I think of beaches, I think of like a really nice resort, like one of my favorite resorts in Cancun, which I love that, because then that means I'm with my wife, I'm hanging out, I'm relaxing. And so like that part, I would enjoy the relaxing more than the theme park, but I don't actually love the beach. So it's not, I think the theme park's more fun than the beach, but the beach is more relaxing. So it's hard to say.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for being here, for watching this episode, everybody. Welcome to the episode number 4 of Successful Quitters. This is a podcast that explores the different things individuals have to go through and have to quit in order to become successful in their arena. And today we have a great guest. I'm super excited. I feel that he is very analytical. He is the CEO of a consulting firm by the name of Solve That Cloud. And he's also the creator and the host of Lessons in Leverage. Welcome, Spencer Lowe.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm super excited to be here. Glad that you have me.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into it. I've watched a few things, or I've listened to a few things that you have out there, and I've learned a bit about you, and I'm very curious to know a bit more about your childhood, how you got here, but from how was the Spencer at 5 years old? Where did you live? How was growing up for you?
Well, childhood is kind of interesting. So my dad was in the military, and so I was born in the Philippines, actually, on Clark Air Base. And so we were there until I was about 2. And when I was just before I turned 2, Mount Pinatubo erupted, which is the largest, second largest volcanic eruption in the last 100 years. And so 10 miles of mountainside exploded. And it was the middle of the day, but you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and totally blackened the entire sky. So it was a crazy experience. And so my dad was in the security police, so he stayed to help with the evacuation, had to close down the entire base since everyone was leaving. And they actually never even reopened that base. They just gifted it to the Philippines after everyone was out. And then my mom had 6 kids. I was the youngest. And so she took us, and we got shuffled around and evacuated. And so that was kind of a crazy experience. But coming out of that, where we landed was actually at the Air Force Base in Phoenix. And so I lived in Tempe, Arizona when I was 5. So that's how I got to 5 years old. And so we ended up in Phoenix until I was about maybe 6. And then finally ended up in California, where I spent most of my childhood.
So I didn't know that part, and I'm super curious to know what was it like, because you didn't speak English then, right? At 5?
I did. My parents are American, so I grew up speaking English in the house. But it was definitely a cool experience. My nannies were in the Philippines, were all Filipina, and so I had a lot of
Wow.
exposure to the cultures when I was young. But yeah, then once we came back, 5 years old, I'm in Arizona, and yeah, we spoke English in the house.
And how was to being the youngest of six? That's a few
Yeah,
siblings.
it's a good sized family. So I grew up in a family that's Mormon, very religious, very
Mm,
conservative, and so had a lot of kids, and had a lot of great things that came with that. But for me, it meant I had a lot of other parents. My oldest sibling is 15 years older than me, and
wow.
so I just had a lot of different influences beyond my parents, kind of helping raise me, and so there's a lot of good in that, but. Um, Life is what you perceive, it's what you focus on. And the story of my childhood for a long time was that I was kind of an afterthought, because all the kids were fairly
Mm.
close within a few years of each other. And then it was 5 years before I came along. And so I was kind of this last kid that was straggling out behind the others. And so I was kind of annoying. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be part of whatever was going on, but I was so much younger. And so I constantly just felt like I wasn't
Left
really,
out.
yeah, just I wasn't, well, I was kind of left out. And so that drove me to really want to prove that I was good enough. And that
Mm.
kind of ended up becoming a large part of my entrepreneurial journey, and how the rest of my life developed.
I love talking about this age because in most cases, and not all of them, but in most cases, this age, there was some sort of an impact that makes you become who you are, later on in life. And what activity would you remember from your childhood? What kind of activities would you say you enjoy the most?
Oh man, what do I remember from my childhood? I remember going out and playing street hockey and rollerblading with my
Mm.
brothers. I remember wrestling with my brothers, generally all the way until we started actually fighting, and then my dad would get mad at us, and it'd start off laughing, and then we'd end up in tears, and take it too far. Um, and so yeah, I remember just my childhood was a lot of just go outside and play. At that time it was much more just go out, come back when the street lights turn on, make sure you're here for dinner. And that's was kind of the rules. It was pretty open, and I had a lot of freedom to just kind of tag along with my brothers and go play.
So your father was someone that from the beginning, or I don't know if it was your parents or mainly your father was someone that from the beginning told you, hey, if you want to buy this or that, you have to work for it, right?
Yeah, so
So
not a lot of money in the military. So we
yeah.
didn't have tons of money. We were fine. We had our needs met. We weren't like in poverty or anything. But my parents were really good with money. They budgeted very carefully. And one of the things they did is when you turned 8, from 8 on, they started giving you the allowance, but it wasn't an allowance for you to go spend. It was, here's the money we would spend on you if you if we didn't give it to you. So in other words, you have to keep track of the money and take care of it. So, and my dad, Excel was just barely coming out at this point, and computers were still very early on, but he would show me how to go into the computer and keep track of my money, and then reconcile it against the bank, and all these little financial skills, which were helpful so that I could learn how to manage money. And it was only $20 a month. And then when school time came around, I had to use what I had saved up for clothes, school supplies, stuff that most kids, their parents just buy this stuff for them. But my parents kind of made us be in charge of all that on our own. If I wanted to buy gifts for my siblings or anything, had to come out of that money. Everything came out of that money. Other than my house and my food that they provided, everything else was on me from that money. So it did teach me responsibility early, and kind of gave me this sense of what things cost and what it takes to buy things. And so I was really early on very aware of, like, oh, if my friends got some new shoes and they were $100, I'm like, that's an insane amount of money. That's like half my money for the year. Like that. I had a really strong vision for how I needed to make my money last and go farther.
Nice. Wouldn't it be super helpful if school would actually add something like this for kids to learn so that they were ready once they got out of high school? I think they would help
I
a lot, right?
think it would. I think it's hard though, because school doesn't. Um, it's got to happen, I think, in the family. Even though I would love for school to help, I think part of the reason it has to almost happen in the family is because it's harder to give the amount of responsibility you need to give. Schools don't give you money,
Mm.
for example. Now, if schools could give you money, which maybe there's a model where schools do give you money, then I would say great, schools do it. But I think there's there's this need for you to get more proximate, get closer to the decision making and the understanding. And so,
Yeah,
since your parents are the ones buying it for you and they're providing for you, they're the best equipped to sort of hand that to you. But certainly, I think in terms of education, we really need a bunch more tools for kids to learn how to manage their finances and all of that.
absolutely. At least something like Excel that kind of shows you, your expenses and everything that comes in and goes out. You at 12 years old were mowing lawn, right? That
Hmm.
was kind of like your business. And then at 14, you were door knocking.
Yes.
What was it that you were selling when you were door knocking?
Newspaper subscriptions. So
Oh,
what happened was when I was 12, one of my good friends, his parents bought him an RC car. And it was a really nice one. It was a gas powered engine little car that was super nice, cost hundreds of dollars. And I was like, I don't even, if I saved all my money for a year and didn't buy any school supplies or clothes, I still couldn't buy that. And so I went to my
mhm.
dad and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I'm doing what you're telling me. I'm saving money. I'm putting certain amount of money towards giving away to other people and to church, certain amount of money towards, savings and investments. And like he made me parse it out. And then all the rest of my money is for clothes and for this. So I'm doing the right things. And yet I'm never going to be able to afford this. So what am I supposed to do? And he's like, well, I'll buy a lawnmower and you could use that to start, seeing if you could get people to pay to mow their lawns. I was like, okay, that sounds good. So started the lawn business and really quickly got to the point where I had enough neighbors doing it with me that I would spend 5-6 hours on a Saturday. And in my family, I wasn't allowed to work on Sunday, at least growing up. And so I really only had one day a week as school and then the evenings. And then it was just Saturday was the day I could work. And once I kind of filled up Saturday, I thought, again, I'm making a lot faster progress towards this RC car, but I'm kind of capped on what I can make. And so when I saw an advertisement for knocking door to door, its big thing was you can make so much more money. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can make so much more money. I better do that. And plus I like talking. I'm good with people. This will be great. So my parents said okay, and some random guy came by in a big white van with a bunch of other kids in it. My parents gave him the thumbs up. I got in the back of this van. He drove me into the city, 40 minutes away, and dumped us out, honestly, in the ghetto. We had no idea where we were. It was like, sell the
Oh
newspaper.
my God.
And so it was crazy, but it was, again, a very good experience, very formative experience to start talking to people and learn how to go knock on someone's door and try to engage and get a sale.
Yeah, that sounds like fun and scary at the same time. Um, and at that age, did you have anything in mind as to, did you know what you wanted to do when you grew up?
Well, I wasn't sure. My dad was my hero. So he had started his career in police work, and police work sounded fun to me. I thought, I would love to be a police officer.
Mm,
He was in the military. I thought maybe I need to go into the military. I think we all kind of see whatever examples around us, and that's always the first thing to our head. And so I was kind of thinking maybe the military, maybe police work. But I never even really considered college or anything like that. I was like, this isn't something I'm going to do. And once I saw the money I could make with sales, I thought, oh man, I don't know why anyone would do anything other than sales. I'm making more money as a teenager than most people after they graduate college. Like, this is insane. I was making, in just 3 hours a night, I was making usually anywhere between $80 and $120 a night in 3 hours. And this was back in, the early 2000s when that was a lot of money. So I felt like I was on top of the world. I'd go to high school and I'd tell people, like, I'm doing sales forever. I'm going to make more than you'll make after college. Like, sales is the way. And so that became kind of my obsession, was thinking that sales was going to be my life. And that's actually one of the things I ended up having to quit a little bit later, was the beliefs that I had around sales.
Oh, well, what were those beliefs?
Well, I essentially believed that school wasn't valuable and that sales was the only way to make money, and that I had to, and that making money was the most important thing. And so with that in mind, I mean, sales was going to be my whole future. So
Yeah.
I went off the church that I grew up in. They send their young people out on missions, or they're called. So for 2 years, you go to another country, you learn a different language. You basically are doing door-to-door sales for 2 years, but it's Jesus that you're selling. It's not, products. You're just trying to share, religion.
The work.
And
Yeah.
so, but the tactics and the practices are the same as someone who's doing door-to-door sales. So I did door-to-door sales all the way up until that. Then I went out and did that for 2 years, lived in France and Luxembourg and Switzerland, got exposed to a
Wow.
lot of different ideas. And then while I was doing that, I came home, or when I was done doing that, I came home and went right back into selling, got hired as a gallery director to run an art gallery and do sales there. And after about 6 months of that, I realized all my friends were at college. I had no social life, and I had to work when everybody else didn't have to work. And that's pretty typical of a lot of sales roles, not all, but it's like nights, that's when people are available, or when the stores are busy. That's, weekends, that's when the store makes the most sales, or people are at home if you're doing door to door. So a lot of the most aggressive sales roles, if you want to make a lot of money, at least in the direct to consumer space like that I was in, I meant I had to work when everybody else wasn't working. And I started to hate it. And I was like, man, there's got to be something different. And so one of my friends called me and he said, look, I know you had horrible grades in high school, but you should just try to come out here and go to college with us. And he was going to Brigham Young University. It's a university in Utah. And I was like, okay, I'll try. So I just quit my job, packed everything I had in the car, had no money, no place to live, no job, no plan. And I just drove out to Utah, showed up and said, all right, let's figure it out. And I found a place to live and I found a job, applied to the college. I got in as just a what's called a non-admitted student. So they didn't admit me because my grades weren't good enough, but they allowed me to take classes and earn credits. I did that for 2 semesters, got good enough grades with those that I could apply as a transfer student to the same school, and they accepted me as a transfer student. So next thing you knew, I quit this idea that sales is the way and money's what matters. Instead, I was like, hey, social life matters if I ever want to get married, and education matters. And so next thing you know, I'm in this program and I get a bachelor's and master's degree in information systems management, and started on a new path that led to a different education.
So why that major?
So
out of everything, you were like, I'm not going to go to school. And all of a sudden you go into that specific major. Why?
what I thought I was going to do, I looked at the landscape and I thought, all right, if I'm not doing sales, maybe the next closest thing that would be valuable is business management. I think I have a skill set where I could do that. And my friend that had invited me out, him and another one of my friends, both were in what's called the business management with an emphasis on strategy. That was the program they were in the business school. It's the Marriott School of Business at BYU. So I showed up there thinking I'm going to go into business management and I'm going to learn strategy. That's what I'm here for. And the business school has a certain set of prerequisite classes you have to do in general. And as I was going through those prerequisites, one of them was an information systems class. And in that class, I was like, this is my favorite class by far.
Nice.
All the tools I was learning, we learned a little bit of basic programming and things like that. And I was like, I feel so powerful. This is so cool. This is the future. I got to go all in on this. So I changed my major at that point while I was doing the prereqs. It's the same prereqs for the IS program because it's also a business degree, but it just also has a technical component. And so at least at that university, that's how that's positioned. It's basically half of an MBA and half of a computer science degree. So it was a really good pairing for me that I ended up really liking. And so, yeah, just found my way as I went.
Nice. I think that one of the reasons for the general studies the way they are is to kind of guide you as well, so that you might find a different path than the one you entered with, which is really nice. I think school is a very good addition to anyone's career, whether you're going to be in sales or anything else. It just sets you up with a little more strength. And so you said that you were never into school prior to this, but I've heard you really like books. You enjoy reading, which is understandable because I was like that and things start to shift. So I wanted to know, since there are books you're interested in and the ones you're not interested in, you might not go back to. What is the book that you've reread the most and why?
Oh man, which one have I reread the most? Are we counting audiobooks? Because I do a lot of audiobooks as well.
Sure. For sure.
So, okay, well maybe let me answer the question about why I didn't like books or what this dichotomy is. So I didn't like school because I felt like they were wasting my time. And so I just checked out and I thought sales was the answer. So I had a 1.9 GPA in high school. I barely graduated. And I just focused on other things, sales, video games, whatever I wanted to do. I just did other things. Once I realized that college was a path to find a future wife, make friends, like other things. Once college became more to me than education, then I went for that and was like, if I get an education, fine. And then I started getting education. I still found it valuable, but I ended up quitting that for my career. So while I was still in college, I started my career, and that's a whole nother kind of phase that I went through, another quitting and had to stop believing different things. So I got straight A's actually in college for 2.5 years, and then I got the minimum grades I needed to get the rest of the way, because I kind of quit college at that point. But anyway,
Yeah.
so it was actually once I got into the career, once I realized school is valuable, but I don't need to be perfect at it. I need to start seeing how I can apply it in the real world. That's where I got my career started. And when I got my career started, very quickly, my talent outpaced my experience. And that's where I started to realize that, okay, I'm doing things at a really fast pace. I'm getting promotions and opportunities at this really fast pace, but I'm constantly feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to catch up to people who have 10, 20 years of experience who are around me. So how do I not feel like an imposter? How do I get up to speed? There's so much I need to know. And I stumbled on some quote, and I don't remember which exact one it was. I want to say it was maybe from either Warren Buffett or his partner. It was a good quote about books, and I thought that makes sense. I'm going to go try to read. But I was just doing it out of necessity to make up for my experience gap. And when I saw how quickly I could take someone who had an entire career of expertise and learn the most important parts in a couple days, just reading a book really quickly, or a week or two, and I could get the most important things out of it, that did so much for my career that I got addicted to it. And then over time, that love for reading sort of expanded. But knowing that is important before I tell you which book I've read the most, because to me, the books that I've read the most have been the ones that give me that drive the most impact in my career or in my skills. And that's not the only reason to read. There's a lot of good reasons to read. But for me, reading was a way to satisfy my desire to grow and to learn and to improve faster than life was giving me the experiences. And once I realized I could do that with the right book, it just unlocked this whole thing for me. And so I started doing a combination of audiobooks and Kindle reading books and physical books and just lots of different things. And so there's a couple books that I've read more than any other. Probably the one that comes most to mind right now is actually one I've reread the most recently. And it's an audiobook, and it is Unleash the Power Within by Tony Robbins. So I could go
I
on a whole
love
thing.
Tony Robbins.
I could spend a long time just talking about Tony Robbins, but we won't. Without digressing, a lot of the most powerful beliefs that have helped shape my life later in life have come from him. And so that book in particular, because it's read by him, it's his voice, triggers in me memories I have from different events I've been to and things that allow me to really get a lot out of it. And so it's more powerful than the content within it. The content is really good, but it triggers memories that then put me in a certain state and allow me to go execute at a high level.
I love your feedback on books and in school. I feel that I went through basically the same thing you went through. Didn't like school, then I went into college, then I took all the classes that I loved, and then I was like, okay, bye. I'm gonna move on to better, bigger things that make me happier. And then what I love is the fact that you continued going to better, bigger things, and you opened your business. So tell me about your consulting business a little bit. When was it that you were like, okay, it's time?
Yeah. So kind of the phases, right? I sort of had the school doesn't matter, sales is all that matters. And then I quit that for school does matter and sales doesn't matter so much because it's too demanding on your time. And then I quit that for, okay, I'm going to have a career that's more important than school. And so that was about halfway through my education. I realized that if I wanted to, someone shared with me that what they had made when they graduated, it was a pretty high salary. And I was like, that's way above the average for our program. How did you do that? And what they said was, I made sure that I had more skills than everybody else when I graduated, and I used that to get the best jobs so that they didn't feel like I was starting, like most graduates they hire are starting from the same place. And I wanted to be ahead of that. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. I got to start doing that right now. I need to get ahead of whatever skills I'm going to need for my career. So I started doing internships on the side while I was still in school, and then actually started working full time on those
Mm.
internships and doing them throughout school. So most of my school, I was working full time. At the beginning, it was just because my job sucked and I had to work full time to pay for school because I graduated with no debt. So to do that, I had to be working full time all throughout. And so on the second half, I finally realized, all right, these are the jobs that are going to get me what I want. And I ended up at a company called Chiasmo, which was a Salesforce consulting firm, and that. I got so much opportunity there. I saw the growth of the company. When I joined, they were maybe doing a little more than $1 million in revenue. And by the time I left, just 3.5 years later, we had gotten it all the way up to 8+ million, maybe almost 9 million in revenue. And
Nice.
so being on that journey, and very quickly I got promoted into leadership positions and had a lot of responsibility there. And so I was able to see a lot of what we had been through and how we got there. And I thought, okay, if I can get from 0 to 1 million, I know I can do. I was running, by the time I left, I was running about half the consulting team, and our results were just way above the other team. I felt very confident in the results I was seeing. So I was like, all right, if I can just get from 0 to 1 million, then I know I can grow it from there. And so I used to do door-to-door sales. If there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that I can kind of get things started, right? But in order to
Yeah.
quit a safe job where I had a high-paying salary and start something that was very unknown, what I had to do was I had to invert the way I viewed risk. And this is actually something that I've repeated many times in my life, and is probably one of the most valuable skills someone listening to this podcast from me will get. So I think it's worth maybe spending just a second on here, which is, too often we have a few biases as humans at play here, but we overvalue what we perceive to be a known loss, and we undervalue a potential gain. And so
Mm.
what that means is, if I'm making $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year at my current salary, and I'm now looking at starting a business, I think to myself, I'm losing $150,000. And it feels very consequential because it's a known loss. We know what we're losing. And what I'm gaining, it could be nothing. It could be very big. It could be way more than $150,000.
Yeah.
And so most people get stuck there because one of them is much heavier than the other. And losing 150 for sure is way more painful than maybe making more than 150. So what you have to do is change how you're looking at the risk, such that that becomes actually out of balance the other direction. So the way that I did that was I went and I started researching what would I be making at other firms. And what I found is, because I had progressed so quickly, I was fairly underpaid at my current position. And other people
Mm.
doing what I was doing at the time, so I was making about 120 at the time, to use my numbers. And other people doing what I was doing were making between 180 and 220. And I was like, okay, so if I just went and got another job, I would be making significantly more, almost double. So staying at this job when I could be making almost double that makes staying here a really risky decision, because I'm risking all of the upside of the other job. If
Right.
I know I have to leave the job anyways, and I have 6 months to a year of savings, which I did, then it would only take me 1 year, maybe slightly more. If I burned all that savings, it would only take me a year to get back to where I am now. So now, if I quit my job, try to start a company, and totally fail, I could get a job paying significantly more, because I'd also have all the experience from that would make me more valuable. And then I'm making double, and I'm back to break even. I'm back to the same place in a little over a year.
Yeah.
So staying at my current job is the most risky thing I could do.
Right.
And if I'm going to leave, which would I rather do? I have a potential job that could make me more money, or I have a potential business that could make me more money and give me more freedom. And now between those two, starting the business made the most sense. So I had to get to this point where simultaneously I had decreased any fear of loss, and I had increased my understanding of what was at risk if I didn't try to follow what I thought I should do, such that doing what I thought had the most upside became the no-brainer option. It became the most obvious, least risky thing for me to do. And this is something that people say a lot. They go, "Oh wow, you're so brave to put up with that risk," or you have a higher risk tolerance than me. I really don't. I'm actually very risk averse. I just get myself to see risk properly. And once I see it properly, I take actions that will get me much larger outcomes, because there's so much risk that we just ignore in staying where I'm at, not taking the risk, the quote unquote risk, doing what I've always done. We just don't take the time to properly understand how big of a risk it is to do that. And once you do, then it becomes way more obvious that there might be another path for you. So anyways, that's an important skill I think people need to understand if they ever want to get themselves to do something that they perceive as different or risky.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the stories that you were telling on a podcast that I listened, um, that you have on your Spotify, is that your father kept his job to have financial stability. Then he was fired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
So this makes so much sense, because you think I'm so stable financially because I have a job that, I know I have a salary that I'm going to get every single month, but you don't know as stable as a company could be. They could run out of business or replace you for someone else. So it's never the safest. If you have something in your heart that you want to follow, you got to give it your all and really risk, because I think that when you're 80 years old, those are the things that you regret. But if you risked it and things didn't go well and you just learned, at least you have a story to tell and a lot of experience. But if not, it's like being on the safe side is a lot riskier for sure.
The
So
risk
you,
is that right there is an important tool you can use as you're trying to invert that equation. You just said it perfectly. Thinking how much you might regret it in the future and the pain that will cause you, that can help you to get on the right side of the risk equation and say, oh, it's actually way more risky for me to do the thing that I think is quote unquote safe if I know I'll regret it later. If you won't regret it later, great. But if you will, that makes it a lot more risky.
I think that if you see it that way, it's kind of a bird's eye view. You
Hmm.
can actually see the entire situation rather than you being inside your fear. It's like you have to assess um, the entire surroundings of your idea, and why the reason of which makes you want to leave has to be strong enough for you to push all the way through.
Hmm.
Because if others made it, why couldn't you make it? That's the one question. If
Hmm.
others were able to get to that place, why couldn't I make it? And if no one else has done it before, why couldn't I be the first one? You
Hmm.
know? So you started your company and now you've grown it um, throughout the years. Where is the location of do you guys have a main location?
Yeah, so we're primarily based out of Utah, which is where I live. But we actually only have an office one day a week. So everyone is primarily remote. We started as a remote first company. We've always been remote first. We did that before COVID. And so we've always been that way. It made COVID really easy for us in a lot of respects. Um, but we're based out of Utah, and we have now a little over 60 people working for us globally. So we've grown quite a bit in the first 5 years.
And you're kind of like the entrepreneur's best friend, because you have solutions for everything, right? You guys do. You guys help with advising for sales. What is it mainly that you guys do? Let's say that I have a business and I want to talk to you because I want to grow um, my income. How could you help me?
Yeah, I think we are definitely the entrepreneur's best friend, maybe as friends and as advisors, but as a business, we fit a pretty specific need, which is you either are in the process of considering or purchasing Salesforce.com, or you already have Salesforce.com, and you need technical expertise to get the most out of the system. That's our dominant area. We also are doing some things with generative AI, and that's somewhat new to the business. And so that's a growing segment of what we do. But our target customers are basically high-tech businesses and financial services businesses who have Salesforce.com and either need to implement it correctly, optimize it because it's not working the way they need it to, or help them manage it and govern it long term, which we have ongoing subscription offerings where we provide the service of being your administrator and taking over the system and being proactive, not reactive. So telling you, here's where the opportunities are to get more out of the system, because Salesforce is such a robust platform. It can do so many things that it's important, one, that you be disciplined and not try to do everything, and two, that you know that you're getting the value for what you're paying for. I just had a conversation recently with some people who are an accounting firm who are paying for a type of license that offers tons of value, and they're only using one thing. Just to keep it real simple, it's like buying a crayon box that has 100 crayons in it, and they're only coloring with red. And you're like, that's great. Why did you buy the 100 crayon set? Because if you're only using red, you could just buy a red crayon for a fraction of the cost. And so this is a common thing that people get into, where they're using a system that's so robust, they don't even know what they're paying for in their licenses. They don't know how to get the max value out of that. They don't know how to configure it to make it do what they want. So we're really focused on helping those companies at the intersection of like designing the business process and then getting the technology to drive the results that they need.
And outside of, so is Salesforce a big CRM, or
Yes.
is it a CRM and everything else and other services?
Yep, that's probably the second is more true. They've, between building their own products and then acquiring other firms, they have solutions across a ton of different B2B areas. They also have B2B, B2C solutions, but we don't play in that space. So we just focus on the B2B side. And so with, I guess that's not entirely true, because our Fins customers also go direct to consumer, but it's a little bit different than what I'm talking about. We don't do like e-commerce and some of the other more traditional B2C type things. So Salesforce has their CRM. That's what they first did. It was their first offering. But they have all sorts of different products that they sell on top of that. So some of those are just different feature sets in the CRM. Some of them are entirely additional products, like marketing products, service products, just solutions for all sorts of things. I mean, they have Slack is owned by Salesforce, so setting up Slack for communication and collaboration. They've got just a too many to go through. But that being said, the other element is it's not just that we're experts on all the products they sell. We're also experts on the other big piece, which is how do we integrate that with the rest of our tech stack. So if, let's say Salesforce is my CRM, but I also have XYZ other system that I'm using. Maybe it's a marketing tool. Maybe it's a lead tool. Maybe I'm using Outreach for my sales cadences, and I'm using Gong for my calling, and I'm using, I'm getting my data from Zoom Info, and I'm, it could be anything, right? I have all these tools. I just want to work from one place, and I want it to all work together well. Some of those have sort of pre-built integrations that we help people set up. Sometimes we have to do custom coding. And the thing about Salesforce is it's, on top of being a software, it's also a platform. So you can build fully custom solutions on it. So we'll build, some pretty crazy stuff for companies that have custom use cases as well. So anyways, it's a very broad area, but our focus point is around that particular software that we have deep expertise in. And then we go into all these other tangents because we have to become experts on that to drive the results for our customers. That's why I named the company Solved, is because a lot of firms just become experts on like the one software, the one thing. And then if they're like, oh, if it's not that, you got to hire someone else. We have always taken pride in being people that will solve the actual business problem. So if we need to get new expertise or bring in another consultant or do whatever we have to do to make sure we know how that process should work and what the tools need to do and what other tools are available and how we make them all work together, we go all the way until it's fully solved.
I'm a real estate agent, so believe me, I understand the value of CRMs. All righty, let's go into something that is very important, your podcast, right? You started your podcast, and the idea of it is to give value and to help others understand and make the most out of leverage, correct?
Yep.
What was it? When was it that, did it take you a little while to get it going? Did you think about it for very long, or was it like, okay, I gotta do it and I'm gonna do it in a short amount of time, get it going in a short amount of time?
That's a good question. I was thinking about maybe doing it for a long time. Mostly, originally, I was sort of just trying to take the advice of like, I should have a podcast because that's what you should do to help your business. And so originally I was like, I should create a Salesforce podcast that's, in line with my business, but it just didn't sound fun to me. And I wasn't sure. I kind of waffled on different concepts and things. So I never really got any of those off the ground. And then a good friend and mentor of mine, he has his own podcast that has done really, really well and is now into the millions of viewership or listenership. and is really worth something now. And he told me, he says, when I first started it, all I was doing was I needed a reason to network with people that I admired. He's like, and so I wanted to know, specifically what I wanted to know was how they were using their money, what they were doing with their money. And so I needed a good reason and way to ask them about their money that wasn't rude. And so I created this podcast called Millionaires Unveiled. And the idea was I would interview millionaires and have them tell me what they were doing with their money. And he says, I didn't care if I ever got a listener. I just really wanted to know so I could learn from how they deploy their money, because he was becoming very successful. And he's like, I don't even know what I should be doing here. And so it solved a personal problem for him. And then, because it was such valuable insights, long-term, it became valuable in and of itself. And so once I got that reference of like, okay, what would be a subject I love talking about with other successful people that would allow me to network with people I want to network with, that would allow me to explore topics I'm really passionate about and would give value to people that they might actually care about. That intersection of those things came down to this concept of leverage, where I realized every time I go to founders retreats or networking events with other entrepreneurs, this is what I get obsessed with. What I end up asking them about is like, what do you know that I don't know that allows you to get a bigger output out of a smaller input? Because I'm convinced that that's the secret sauce to most of how the world works. Like I meet other entrepreneurs and they're just playing games that I didn't even know existed, where they're like, oh, I bought a business and I did it using money from people in China, where they just paid me in order to get a visa, and I had to take that money and deploy it into an opportunity zone. So I had to put no cash down. I just had to build the relationship with the person in China that has the cash. And then now I went off and I purchased 25 franchises of Papa John's, and I'm running that whole business. And then I pay them back plus their returns. And now I own it all outright. And I didn't have to put any money in myself. And I own a multi-million-dollar portfolio of franchises. And you just go, okay, that's insane. Like that's a game that I didn't even know existed, that someone is playing and is making 8 figures plus with, that they have figured out a set of things and pieced them together such that they've created massive leverage in that space. Or another friend that I met who was explaining to me how private equity roll-ups work, and how when he purchases one of the companies that they're acquiring, he purchases it for, let's say, 4 or 5x EBITDA, meaning if you just think of that as like the money, let's just, for any listeners who may not be familiar with the accounting terms, it's like the money the business makes at the end of the year, I'm going to pay you 4 to 5 times that to own the business. Well, the thing about that is, even though he paid 4 to 5 times the money they were making at the end of the year, as soon as he bought the company, he brings in with him a different cost structure. So what they used to pay for their resources and their inventory, he pays half that because he's much bigger. What they used to pay for their management team, he doesn't need their management team. He can let their management team go because he already has a centralized management team that manages all the stores. So as he buys each additional store, he actually gets his money back. The value of the business to him, he gets all his money back in the first year. So even though they would have thought when they sold it, oh, it'll be 5 years before he gets his money back, he gets his money back in the first year. So this is an arbitrage of the fact that he has a different cost structure for the business when he acquires it that they couldn't have and don't have. And so this is where there's just magic in different M&A games that are being played by some of these entrepreneurs, where it's like, I can acquire this business at one value and immediately sell it for double because now it's part of a larger business. Or so there's all these types of games that you don't even know exist that have 7, 8, 9 figure upside behind them, that when you awaken to them, you go, oh my gosh, like that's why you're so rich. Like, don't get me wrong, you're also smart, you work hard and everything else. But the reason that you're doing that is because you figured out some stuff to wield massive leverage where I was just working for money as hard as I could. And so that's this thing that the podcast is designed to explore. It's designed to explore that because I want to know. I want to know from other people what these secrets are, what they learned, how they got to where they got, what mindsets needed to change. Like there's high leverage mindsets, there's low leverage mindsets. There's this concept of leverage is kind of, for me, is built into everything. And so I just like the opportunity to then share that with the world. And frankly, for myself to learn as I meet people. And my hope is that gives back, a lot of value to the community. And the thing that really makes it urgent in my mind is that one pattern around leverage that I saw come out as I talked to so many entrepreneurs is most entrepreneurs start with either labor leverage or technology leverage, and then they move into the other, and then the last game they start playing is financial leverage. And so what I mean by that is maybe someone starts with a service business like I did. So I have a set of skills in technology, and I can start a business, I can sell those skills, and I can grow that. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is start using labor leverage. I'm going to hire other people, teach them my skills, let them do the work, and that's going to give me leverage to get a bigger result, have a bigger company, even though I'm still just one person, right? I'm one person, but through other people, I can now have $1 million business instead of a $300,000 business. So year one, I did 350,000. Year two, I did 1.2 million. All I had to do was hire 4 or 5 people and have them do the work, and I kept selling. I kept managing, I kept training. So that gave me labor leverage to get a bigger outcome. But that's just one type of leverage. As we get bigger, then you need to use technology leverage. I need systems, I need tools, I need automations, I need code, I need things that can do things for me at scale. So I add that to keep growing. But now I start to have some real income and some real cash on hand because this is now producing a lot of money. And that's when I now can do things like go purchase other businesses or purchase parts of businesses, invest in investments that are totally only available to people that are accredited investors. There's all sorts of financial leverage games you can play once you've used either labor leverage or technology leverage. And there could be media leverage, there can be some other ones, but usually it's either technology or labor that start to build up the wealth necessary to play some of the financial leverage games. And that is why it's so important right now, is because AI is going to massively disrupt both labor leverage and technology leverage. And it's going to do a lot of the things that people are doing today in that space better than they can do it, which will flatten and commoditize a lot of the leverage in those spaces. Not all, but that's a disruption that's coming. And so what I'm trying to help people see is before AI does that, or as it does that, one, how do you just use the leverage available to you now to gain the resources to play the financial leverage games? And or two, as AI comes in, what new opportunities does that create for you to gain leverage using AI? Because that's an area that it's going to be its own source of leverage. So it's just an area that I'm really passionate about because I think it can change people's lives, both financially and across the board.
100%. There's so much that you're giving with this, and it's also giving you back because there's a lot of leverage within making the connection with different kinds of people that will also help you, because networking is everything nowadays. Do you think that it makes a huge difference? It has always made a big difference to know more people, even though you're not that talented. Do you think that will get you a little bit further? Do you think there's more leverage?
Yeah, no question. We talk about that. I call that relationship leverage. So, there's a lot of different ways to think about it.
That's a good way to say it. Relationship leverage. Yes.
But I like to think about relationship leverage, and there's different one of the things people have to understand is with relationship leverage, you get more leverage from certain relationships than you do from other ones, and it's counterintuitive. So this comes from network theory. So if you read about network theory, if you want a real tactical read, you can read about network theory. But one of the major takeaways that you find that applies to relationship leverage is where networks are really dense. So in other words, let's say that we have a lot of shared connections. Every incremental connection I make has little to no value. So to put that in even more plain terms, let's say that I'm in high school and I have a bunch of friends in high school and a bunch of people I know. If I make one more friend at high school, I'm not significantly more likely to find a girlfriend. I'm not significantly more likely to be on a sports team, to learn about a cool club. The reality is I probably was already going to find out about that from someone else in the network or myself, because a lot of the people that are in that person's network are already in my network. So having these highly redundant networks where I'm adding a lot of connections, but they're all people that have the same experiences and the same connections as me, is actually really low value. And so sometimes people will hear this concept of relationship leverage and they're like, I'm going to branch out and start talking and networking to people more and more, but they're staying in the same network and it's so much less valuable. Versus if I make one friend at the school across town, and that friend is now able to introduce me to hundreds of other girls that might be my girlfriend. tens of different events that I didn't know were going on, or clubs or activities. I just expanded my possibilities exponentially because he is going to have a whole new set of connections that he or she offers up to me. So when you're building a network, when you're trying to acquire relationship leverage, it's actually the people that are not necessarily your best friends. It's people that you have a loose connection with, but that connection is to an entirely different network. That creates the majority of the value. And so finding ways to get introduced to and meet people who have totally different networks. So like you and I here, the fact that you're in LA, I only have a few connections in LA. My favorite sushi restaurant is in LA. I love Sugarfish. It drives me crazy.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
flown there just for the sushi before. It's that good. But I don't know almost anyone in LA. So if you're well connected in LA and all of a sudden there's some opportunity for us to work together, just one connection to you is way more valuable than my 5 closest friends, because all of them know all the same people I know. They have all access to all the same opportunities I do. If there's someone who needs help with Salesforce in their network, I already know about them. They're already talking to me. So you see how this it's a multiplicative effect where each loose connection to a totally unique network is massively valuable. So instead of meeting 100 people that are all have a similar network to you, you're better off meeting 5 people that have totally different experiences and live in different geographies and are connected to totally different networks. So for me, I'm focused on both with the podcast and anytime I'm building relationship leverage, I'm trying to find who's someone who lives in New York and is connected to investment bankers and like is totally connected to something I'm totally disconnected from. Who lives in Dallas and is connected to a bunch of the financial companies there, or is connected to a bunch of the oil companies, because especially in Texas and the South, there's tons of focus on energy companies, right? So who's really well connected with energy companies that I know? Do I have a network node there, right? And so when I'm building my network, I get way more leverage out of that activity.
Definitely. You've said very many good things, but this is my favorite. This theory definitely opens your eyes to something else because, like you said, sometimes you're around a great network, but you're going back to the same and the same and the same, and you're not opening those horizons. And one last thing would be, what is it that you had to quit to become the you that is sitting right here in front of us today? What do you think is the most important thing you had to quit?
Well, you today, the person that I am right now, is actively quitting the person that I was to get here. So I'm in the middle of another quitting phase or another transformation, which I think you should be transforming no less than every few years. If you're really focused on growing as an entrepreneur, if you're growing constantly, you're going to have to quit. See, a lot of people think that limiting beliefs are like the bad beliefs, like I can't do it, or I'm not good enough. Those are limiting beliefs, but they're not the ones that are really going to get you. The ones that get you are the beliefs that are limiting you because they worked, because they were good, because they actually made you successful up to now, that actually need to change for you to take the next step. So for me right now, a lot of the beliefs that got me to this part of my business, this size of business, I had to ignore anything that the industry did. I was like, we're going against all the industry trends until proven otherwise. I had to fly in the face of conventional wisdom. I had to not listen to people who told me that won't work, whatever. I had to be extremely stubborn about doing it my way and making that work. And that got us to where we're at. But the skill set to go from sort of zero to a small company versus the skill set to go from a small company to a big company are almost exact opposites. It's why so many private equity companies buy up firms like mine. I get 10 different emails a day from investors who are wanting to buy my company because they just want to replace me. They know that there's someone out there who's got the skill set to take it from where we're at now to 10x where we're at now in a matter of a few years. And they would rather bet on the fact that I can't do it. And so they'll pay for it now, and then they'll hand it over to someone who has that experience. But I want the experience of doing it. So the person what I'm quitting right now is that young entrepreneur mindset to become someone who can build a massive company. And that means I have to accept conventional wisdom. I have to start empowering other people to make all the decisions instead of me, and solving problems by figuring out who the person is who's already done it and trusting them instead of trying to make it my idea or do it my way. And so instead of getting caught up in this tyranny of how and always needing to be involved in how, I have to let go of how and just hold people responsible to the outcomes. So it's a very big shift in how I have managed and built the company, but it's an exciting one, and it's one that I'm enjoying a lot.
And it definitely has to be hard to have to let go. But like you said, I love the fact that you're so aware that those are the steps that you need to take and the things that you have to quit in order to take it to the next level. And what are we looking forward to? Where does Spencer go from here? What's next within the next year? What's coming up?
Well, by the end of this year, we are going to double the company. And I'm very excited about that. And I'm excited about that because it opens up some possibilities. I got some really good advice from a mentor that I've been working for years to be able to get some advice from, and finally was able to get some one-on-one time with him. And he gave me just some life-changing advice because he sold a company like mine for $250 million 2 years ago. And so he has the exact playbook that I need. And I didn't understand some of why he did what he did. And I judged some of it. I was like, man, I don't know if that's really the right way. But when I sat down with him and he really broke it all out for me, I was like, this is exactly the right way. And now not only do I understand what to do really clearly, I understand why you did it. And so I'm really excited about that because when we get to the end of this year, having doubled the company, we'll be at enough revenue. We need to be over 10 million in revenue. We did about 6.5 last year, but we need to be 11, 12 plus to be able to unlock some of the strategies that he shared with me that are going to result in really rapid growth over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And so I'm just super, super fired up about being able to execute on some of the strategies he shared. And so right now, that's what this year holds. Is it's back. I've told the whole company that this is going to be the most transformative year for us since our founding, since the first year of the company, because I'm becoming a whole new person. We are maturing as a company in a major way. And so it's just a very exciting time to now be updating our culture, be updating how we operate and move, and be learning from people that have been there and have given us some really good guidance.
So is maybe a 10-year plan an exit?
Maybe.
Would you? Yeah.
I don't particularly care. So one of the things that happened last year was I got really unmotivated. Not like I wasn't working, but just like emotionally, I didn't have the same fire. And there's several reasons for that, but maybe the most important one was I realized that I was at a place where if I just sold the company last year, I basically had achieved all my life goals. If you just take the money that I would make on a sale and you put it into the time value of money with some conservative estimates on what it would be worth by the time I'm 60, 65, 70, I could live off it plus invest it, and I would be richer than I ever imagined by the time I was 65. I'd be leaving massive generational wealth to my kids, and I could live on the same lifestyle I live now and never work again. And when I realized that, I thought, what am I doing? Like that, there was a time in my life where I was telling myself that's the exact thing I was trying to get to, is like get to the point where you can like have enough money to never have to work. And so I had to go on my own spiritual and personal journey. And this is where Tony Robbins played a really big part. I went to Date with Destiny and really woke up to kind of myself again and really understood what drives me and what I'm going for. And it's not really the money. It's like, it's not the idea of never working again. It's the idea of achieving my potential and actually having the kind of impact I can have. And so what that looks like for me is people-based. It's how many millionaires can I create? How many people can I set up to accomplish big things? Because I know what I can do by myself, but what can I do with everyone that I'm investing in on my team, in my company? How do I build this massive empire? And more important than how do I build it, it's how do I become the person that I think I can be, right? And so that's even what I tell my employees, is that the goal, real security, real certainty in your life comes from knowing who you are, not from a company or someone. So even though I pay my people and I pay them well and they have these salaries and all that, that's not certainty. Even though I've never had layoffs, that's not certainty. Certainty is the experiences I'm giving you, the education I'm giving you, the support I'm giving you to become the kind of person that if you didn't have a job here, you'd get hired immediately in 10 other places, because you always have the skills to go build and do something really big. And so to me, that's the type of impact I want to have for as many people as possible. And when I start thinking about what that could look like, then selling the company is really really will just be based on if I think it's the right time for the market. If the market's right, if someone offers me more than I think it's worth, then I'll sell it and I'll immediately go back to building again. It'll just be a new company. And inevitably, long term, it'll be with a lot of the same people. I just, to me, the relationships are everything. That's the massive thing that you can't take for granted. And so the relationships I've built at my current company are, to me, lifelong relationships. The people that have been there since the very beginning and people that we still add to this day. I want to see all those people be wildly successful. And so then it's just a matter of how do you do that? So if a sale would help me do that, then great. If continuing to build the company will help me do that, great. So I don't really have an exit plan, in that I will feel disappointed with myself if I don't feel like I really accomplished my potential, and that's tied to the impact I have on people. And so I just don't know if that or if that would ever be a sell.
I love it. I love that you are not just thinking about yourself, but also the people that's around you. And I am sure that at least the podcast will have a lot of great impact on plenty of people, because it will grow quickly. Spencer, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time and all the golden nuggets. And I enjoy this time. This is the end of episode number 4. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Spencer.
My pleasure.